This is WWE superstar Drew McIntyre, and you're listening to the WWE Podcast.
The champ is
the one that everybody wants, me.
Becky Lynch is going to WrestleMania. Claymore!
Austin 316 says I just whipped your ass.
This is my idol. You're gonna acknowledge me.
Welcome to the Week in Review, everyone. Back tonight is a co-host that you have heard before, a couple of times before. I've got some great positive feedback about him, and he's back tonight, one of the patrons of our show. Ian is back tonight to talk about pro wrestling this week, as we are 1 week away, less than now, 6 days away, from the Clash at the Castle event in Cardiff, Wales. So, Ian, welcome back. How's life?
Oh, everything's good, man. New father here, as we've discussed before, but I am super excited for the first time in a long time with how things have been going under the realm of Triple H and creative.
Definitely. So let's start there with Triple H. I mean, it's really, as we go on in the weeks here, the imprint of Vince McMahon is starting to fade away, and every week Triple H, I feel like, gets a little bit more of a creative fingerprint on the product, because he doesn't have to kind of wrap up whatever Vince was doing. So as we look at the product, as we look at Raw, we look at SmackDown, obviously one of the largest things that Triple H has done, one of the most, I guess, headline things that he's done, is bring in new talent that, well, new in the eyes of fans, but ones that were let go, brought back. Karrion Kross, of course, Dexter Lumis. We've got Johnny Gargano. I mean, so the list goes on. What do you think overall about not just these returns, but Triple H in general so far, how he's handled this the last, 5-6 weeks?
Yeah, I mean, with Triple H's approach with everything, I've taken compared to Vince McMahon, is he's in no rush. He knows what he has for talent. He knows what he sees in the next couple years. And I feel like he's going back to, the old roots. Like, I want to say, like, it was either, SmackDown or this past Monday Night Raw, but like it wasn't so much a lot of storylines, but just like great wrestling matches. And I haven't seen that in a while. And it's like, for the first time in a while, like, you're seeing multiple people that could easily take over, a world title, pending that they figure out what they're going to do with Roman Reigns, whether they combine the titles together to make it, just one title and make a whole new one for Raw. But it's unbelievable that I'm actually getting excited for both Monday Night Raw and Friday Night SmackDown with the talent he has. I mean, the thing that I hope people have seen is he's not giving away too much either. Like with Johnny, like, that came out of nowhere, and I think Vince was, whether it was him or whoever, was just in desperate need of getting the views higher up on the TV shows, and so they would announce, like, this person's returning in 1 week or 2 weeks, but just randomly, some of these NXT guys or guys that formerly were in WWE just show up. And that's what the old WWE used to be, before like the internet and social media. So it's bringing back a lot of great memories for me, and it just giving me good faith in what Triple H has in the future.
So far, so good. And again, I think that when you look at this, Triple H, who has been in charge for what, like, I don't know, a little less than 2 months, a month and a half, whatever it's been, I think, it's hard to give him a complete report card, given he's such a short amount of time. However, given that he's only been in charge this long, and he's done such already a great job in giving you a sense and taste of what and how he's going to manage and do creative moving forward, you have to be encouraged by this. Even if you have no idea who these people are, even if you don't know, if you're just kind of a new fan watching this, you're like, who the hell's, what's Dexter Lumis? Who's Johnny Gargano? Even if you don't know these people, most do, but if you don't, it's still encouraging that he's moving forward with building new stars. I think that's not only bringing back people that he felt Vince let go wrongly, clearly that's the message, but also building new stars, building for the future. That's the whole point of NXT. And so him bringing that that kind of mindset into the main product, into Raw and SmackDown, is a big deal because you're introducing those new stars. It's not just kind of rehashing the same guys and cycling them in and out of the main event. That's one of the big messages I took away, is that Triple H is doing things, and as you just said, making the product feel kind of like it did before, and actually feeling like a product that anything could happen at any time. I mean, before they would tell us that and you just kind of, yeah, whatever. Now it's starting to actually feel that way. So, yeah, I totally agree.
Yeah, I mean, with how Triple H has done so far, sometime in the past, especially with any professional sports, when you have someone that was a former athlete and turned into a coach, and a lot of times it doesn't work out. But in this case, it's really working out with Triple H with his experience, because I think he's probably taking some of his experience from his own career and others where he's like, oh, that should have been, done much better back in 2004. And this is a way to change it now in 2022. I think he might be, fixing some of his errors, because I'm sure he had some, some pull back in the day, being connected with the McMahons and all. But for example, with Dexter, I mean, that just was just random a week ago. But there was when I think it was AJ Styles, I don't know who he was facing, but there was no real follow up to it, nor you didn't need one, because like I said in the beginning, he's playing in the long game. Triple H is he's building up these stories, where Vince, I think I don't know if he panicked or didn't think a story could play out for 6 months, and he would shorten it for a month or two, and it would just get choppy and would make no sense. And I think we still need to allow Triple H to, fix up, some of the broken pieces that Vince McMahon left, which you can still see on a few segments. But yeah, things are looking really good and promising for the young stars. And, they really want, from what I heard, Triple H is not looking for these part-timers anymore, especially champs too. That's why it gives me hope, to see, a wrestler that holds any title and is available to wrestle each week. It's getting ridiculous with some of these stipulations where, they work, half the year. I mean, granted, I know it's a long schedule, but if you're going to be, the champion, you got to be there, every week. It's a big responsibility. So.
It is, and I'm not trying to bury the lead, but later on in the show, guys, we're going to give our early predictions for Clash at the Castle, because there's a lot of matches on that card that I look at and I go, these are difficult to predict, and then there's a couple that I really just don't know. And especially I want to talk about Roman Reigns and Drew McIntyre in terms of your prediction on that, because I'm very curious. But given we just saw what happened on SmackDown, I want to know what your thoughts are on Roman Reigns and the Bloodline and Sami Zayn, who's the honorary Uce, I guess still. I don't think he's an official member yet. He's still the honorary. But they all had just completely destroyed Drew McIntyre, beat him with a chair, beat him with the steel steps, just speared him into oblivion. I mean, so to me, my quick thoughts on it are, I loved it. I loved it because Vince had this almost bad habit of wanting to leave people happy, leave the show with fans happy. And I don't think that's always the best choice, even if in the moment you feel like, well, I want people to leave happy. What about anger? I like the feeling of anger because it makes you want to see the show and see that heel get their ass kicked. I think it's an emotion that has been underutilized in wrestling for a long time because of Vince just wanting to always put smiles on people's faces. But I think this was really good at putting heat back on Roman. He got booed. People weren't cheering this. It was responded to accordingly, and it looked brutal, and it made you want to see what the hell Drew's going to do next week at the 2-year celebration. So what did you make of the final segment of SmackDown here?
Yeah, for me, I think it was predictable, but not in a boring sense. Usually, if the contender's on top, the end of one show, the following week, most likely the champion's going to be on top that week. But no, that's what they need to do, because Roman was starting to become almost a babyface heel. I don't know. He was getting I mean, he has a lot of fans, with the merch and the bloodline and all that. And, at one point I'm just like, I don't even know if people are going to be cheering for Drew at this pay-per-view, because he was just getting so many cheers with the acknowledging segment that he does in the beginning. But it's bringing it back to him, how he, it's really opening up the door and revealing like, all right, Roman cannot do this alone. And, it's interesting when I watch, I know, they're both big dudes, but like Drew is very tall and, obviously built to destroy anything. But when he's up against Roman doesn't look that big. It seems like there's a big height difference, maybe like 3 or 4 inches, but yeah, I like it because it's bringing back the old heat that we needed from Roman, where we need that, like when he finally drops the belts, we want to be so ecstatic and see a new chapter, because not only are we going to be excited for whoever gets those titles, but that's just clearly going to open the door to have a top champion on both Raw and SmackDown. I mean, they might try to. The thing that I don't understand is, throwing it back, like, when Becky won both those belts at WrestleMania 35, she held them for, like a month or two, and then she lost it, I think, to like Charlotte, and then instantly Bayley cashed in on Money in the Bank. And that was fine. It was great for her to enjoy those 2 belts for a little bit, but they knew they had to separate those and give one to each brand. I don't know why they're choosing to do this with blanket on his name, Roman. But yeah, I'm glad that the heat is back on him right now. We need it.
They needed a bit of a kick in the pants with Roman Reigns, because not only is he kind of formulaically coming out there and doing the acknowledge me sing along thing, which actually, as you alluded to, became a little bit of a babyface phrase, and that's problematic if you're trying to get him booed. So they just went back to basics, and that's been kind of my theme that I've been kind of harping on over the last 5 weeks, is that Triple H is just going back to basics, back to what works. That doesn't mean you need to stick with basics and just be super simplistic and just plain about it, but sometimes to kind of just, I guess, reset things, you need to just go back to basics. And they did that with Roman Reigns this week, of just good old-fashioned heel heat, the traditional 4-on-1, 2-on-1, 3-on-1, whatever, the outnumbering of the babyface. It's tried and true over the last 80 years of pro wrestling. It works, and Roman Reigns needed that to reestablish him as the guy that, wait a minute, we kind of like him and we respect him, and he's kind of we know how big of a star he is too. Wait a minute, that SOB needs to get his ass kicked. Like they kind of brought us back to where we should be right now, and I like it. I liked it a lot. It made me feel more emotion for Roman, other than the emotion of, can we just get the belt off him? It made me want to see Drew get back up. And the video packages they were running throughout SmackDown about Drew's journey was so good, and something that they've done not just for Drew, but for the Intercontinental title, the United States title. They've brought back basics of just great video editing and video packages. The power of those video packages is also super, super important.
Yeah, like, I mean, even going back to the SummerSlam, like I totally forgot. I can't remember the last time they did it, but it just reminds me of, like, I think maybe like WrestleMania 18 and stuff. But like when they show like 2 competitors, they kind of do like their kind of moves. They're like looking at each other, and then their faces like freeze. Before the matchup, they'll show up the lineup card. And they finally brought that back for SummerSlam, and I don't know why they ever took that away. Did you ever notice that?
No, I didn't.
Yeah, so like it'd be like Ronda Rousey and like Liv Morgan like staring at each other for the match card, and then they'd be doing their signature mannerisms or whatever, and then they'd be facing the camera, and then it would freeze, and then it would go to their promo. Like they used to do that like 10, 15 years ago, but it just added more to it. But I noticed Liv, she actually tweeted out like, "Oh, great that you guys brought that back." So you should definitely check it out. It's just kind of a vintage thing to do.
Well, Triple H, just small things that he's done production-wise that are just not huge deals, just things that he's done with cameras that aren't in places they shouldn't be when something's going on and the camera has to run down the hallway to see what's going on and not just happenstance be in the room or be right there when things are happening. Makes things feel more organic and just kind of chaos, and the cameras don't know which way to go, and they got like that kind of stuff. The little things that subconsciously you don't think about until they start doing it, and you're like, whoa, that's a nice touch. And we've just been so used to just camera angles being inside of cars with live feeds to the network somehow, with people's heads being put through. I believe Shane McMahon and AJ Styles is most famously for me one of the ones that happened, just god awful stuff like that people just go, oh well, it's still a cool shot. I'm like, do you understand why it takes you out of the moment? But like little things like that, just little production tweaks and this and that makes such a huge difference. And that's kind of been Triple H's MO so far, is just not overhaul. It's a smart way to do it. Just let's try this. Let's introduce this person back. Let's just, let them cut a promo. Let's have a great wrestling match, and not overthinking, overproducing. I mean, who the hell knows what's going on in production meetings? But as a fan, I'm seeing stability. I'm seeing things that are easy to understand. I'm seeing, wrestling on a wrestling show. And that's really what I love.
Yeah. Like I even, this past Raw, I'm pretty sure, correct me if I'm wrong, but I was like, can't remember the last time I actually heard the intro to, each year they always have like a new song or something, but it was like the full intro of the Raw song. Usually a lot of times it just goes right into, a Raw segment, and it doesn't have that like sweet, intro music with all the highlights and stuff that they used to. And I was like, oh, I haven't seen that in like a year or two, maybe after WrestleMania 35. And like you said, just little things like that I'm like, all right, these are baby steps, and Triple H is in no rush. He sees the big picture, and he's not in a rush to take the shortcut for any sort of reason.
And at the same time, he's telling you what's coming next week. I mean, like this, we got an update on Kurt Angle. He's going to be in Pittsburgh. But on SmackDown, they told us of what's coming on next week's SmackDown. They gave us like 4 segments on SmackDown. The Ronda's Final Judgment, Butch versus Ludwig Kaiser, New Day versus Viking Raiders in a Viking Rules match, and then Roman's 2-year celebration. There might have been something else. But they gave us at least 4 that I can think of, things that are going to be up for next week's SmackDown, so you're not just left wondering what they're going to do. They actually have a plan, and you're like, oh, cool, I get to tune in. Fans get to wonder what's going to happen. You get to speculate. Things that beforehand you might know one thing ahead of time. Oh, a contract signing is coming up. Like, how many millions of those have we seen? So just like things like that, you're like, wow. Things that just for whatever reason Vince McMahon tossed to the side, and you hear about ripping up scripts the day of the show, all that kind of crap. So go ahead.
And with like creative writing, again, it's all from the internet and stuff, but like I hear that like everything is just blending very well with the creative team and Triple H and Stephanie McMahon and all them, but like you said, just showing like what's going to happen on next week's SmackDown, that's the difference of like what Vince does, where a perfect example is where Big E, love him to death, wasn't my pick to win Money in the Bank that year, but he's like, I'm literally cashing it in next week. And it's like, you're literally doing that, Vince, just to get ratings up. And it's the whole point of the excitement. Whereas this one here, it's like, yes, you're giving us like pretty much a sneak peek of next week, but that's not because you're in desperate need of views. It's just so you can like kind of formally understand the sequence of events of what SmackDown is going to happen. Like, all right, we're going to have like probably some like a good 2 segments here, like a 2 solid wrestling matches here. So you can at least like expect like what something is going on the show, because there was times under Vince's realm where you're like, what is like on Raw with the 3 hours? You're like, dude, what is he going to do for the next 2 hours? You just put the main event in the first 20 minutes. I don't know how you're going to kill another 2.5 hours.
No, and I think Vince McMahon didn't do that, not only because maybe he felt, we don't want to give everything away. We wanted to make it feel like anything could happen, and I could talk about that for a half hour. But yeah. I think also he didn't know where he was going next week, so he couldn't advertise it. So, I mean, that's the other thing, too, is it seems like Triple H not only is using this to create like excitement for the fans for next week and things to look forward to and think about what could happen, but also just kind of a sense of, as I said, stability, and just kind of like, like things are a little bit less chaotic with Vince not here. Here's how things are going to go now, and it just feels like, okay, I see a little bit going forward. I like that. I like to know maybe what's coming next week. You don't have to tell me everything. I don't want to know everything, but you gave us 4 things that are going to happen on a 2-hour show. Major thing. That's a huge deal, and it shows you they're committed to what they're putting on there. They wouldn't put on something on TV they can't deliver. Whereas I think Vince McMahon didn't do it because he wasn't sure he'd be able to commit to it a week in advance, which is just sad. All right. Well, I want to talk a little bit more about SmackDown and some of the things that happened.
Yeah.
Gunther and Sheamus. Now, I first of all, this is a match I didn't know I wanted. It's a match between 2 heels, which is also an interesting dynamic because they very rarely put 2 heels together, especially on a pay-per-view. But this is a match, and they've sold it very well. Gunther and Sheamus have done an excellent job in their promo this past week, and the announcers sold it as one of the most physical matches maybe ever in the history of WWE. And I believe that from a wrestling perspective. My God, the stiff work that's going to be going on with these two is going to be so much fun to watch. Maybe I'm in the minority, but I'm really looking forward to this matchup, even though it's 2 heels. Gunther and Sheamus for the Intercontinental Championship, which, by the way, suddenly feels like a very important championship that was just buried 6 weeks ago. So, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, as soon as, I'm a huge fan of Ricochet, so when I knew he was going to lose the belt to Gunther, or Gunther, whatever, how you want to pronounce it, but I was very pumped with that because even though Gunther is a heel, like he was still winning in fair ways. He's not really using his sidekick as a cheat sheet. And when I saw that I think it was like a fatal 5-way, and I know Sammy got a lot of pop because it was in Canada, and I was like, oh, that'd have been kind of nice because he actually had a lot of passion for the Intercontinental title like The Miz did years ago. But I'm looking at it, I'm like, and then I saw the review of it, and I saw Sheamus winning, and I'm like, you know what, I like that like, especially the body build of both of them, like muscle on muscle, like it kind of reminds me of Sheamus versus Drew McIntyre. It's going to be a stiff match, but honestly, I when you were saying heel versus heel, I was curious to see what the fans would be interacting with that, but I'm leaning a little towards more of Sheamus being like a little bit of a baby face, not because he wants it from the crowd, but I just think he's a veteran, he's a company man, and he'll do anything to pop the ratings up and bring value back to some of those mid-card titles. I'm just extremely excited. I just hope that there's not too much outside interference because those 2 guys can really put on a show just alone.
And the way that they looked at each other whenever everybody else was brawling, I've never seen that before.
No.
I've watched wrestling for 30 years. I've never seen that where they have each guy has kind of their goonies or whatever, and they're all brawling except the 2 main guys. They're just staring at each other. I've never seen that. That was another thing that I'm like, wow, cool idea, because it's a message sent to fans that, hey, we don't see anything beyond what's in front of us. We know that this is what you guys want to see. We are totally locked into each other. We don't see anything else going on outside of this. It's just such a cool little visual. And yeah, I mean, I just say Gunther. I know it's pronounced differently, but I do it just because I'm committed to saying Gunther. I refuse to say the other way just because I know some people on my show just get pissed when I do it. So I do it partially because of that. Yeah. But other than that, yeah, I'm really looking forward to this being physical as hell. There's going to be welts all over both of these guys' chests. It's going to be stiff. I believe it's just a straight up wrestling match. It's not a no DQ, and that's fine. I want just a straight up wrestling match with these 2. And boy, I think Gunther is a future, not even question, future world champion. I mean, Gunther is a guy that he's got beyond the look. He's got the in-ring ability. Even though he's new, he kind of feels like he says he is. He feels like a ring general, even though I know that's reserved for guys that have been there 10, 15, 20 years. That's more of a kind of a locker room leader type of term or title you give somebody. But it feels like he actually is. I don't know.
Yeah. He seems like a seasoned veteran there, and I definitely watched NXT, when it was the black and gold before it became 2.0. And even then I would kind of glance at the NXT UK and I would see this like massive guy, formerly known as Walter. And I'm just like, all right, what's the holdup? Like, this guy is a beast. Like, bring him on the main show. And then I know they were kind of, they wanted him to lose a couple pounds. And he did. He got in really good shape, and he just has that face, that's like just a heel face and just straight up, just like, I like those type of heels where he's like, yeah, I'm a bad guy, but like, I don't care. I'm just here to fight. I want to just be the best. And he is going to be a future champion. And that's why I was really happy to see him have the championship belt on him, because usually with guys like that, where they're going to be future main eventers, they start out with a mid card title. And whenever he drops that, whenever he does, the next thing he'll be doing is going for, some main event type matches. I think it's going to be an amazing match. Like, if someone told me like, I think the match card's going to be loaded, but that's a match that if you built that up for another couple weeks and you made that like the main event, I wouldn't be like, wicked mad or anything like that, because those two guys could really put on a show.
They can. I think they will. And the way that this is being built is just so perfect. They haven't had any contact with each other. It's just the look, and fans are going to be forced to choose, I would imagine, who they're going to cheer for. And you're right. I think Sheamus is probably going to be default the babyface, even though he's in a heel group, and still heel, because of the longevity of Sheamus, because of the respect that's there. Where Gunther is, well, he's not new to WWE, he's new to the main roster. So this is a match I can't wait to see, and I hope it delivers. But I ultimately think, spoiler alert, I think Gunther's probably going to retain. And I think that he's going to go on a long Intercontinental Championship run. I wouldn't have him drop it, maybe even past WrestleMania. I'd probably have him hold it through like SummerSlam next year.
Yeah.
All right. So let's see what else happened here. This isn't one of the main things that happened, but you mentioned Ricochet and Corbin. Ricochet opened the show. I didn't expect that.
No.
That may have been the first time that Ricochet's opened the show, and he won after hitting the shooting star press. The match was fine. I guess from me, the more pressing question is, what the hell is going on with Happy Corbin? I mean, he is on a hell of a losing streak, and he has, for the last 2 months, been anything but Happy Corbin. So, I mean, he's always sour. He's just angry. He's been like this for months, though. The announcers are talking about how bad his attitude is. So is WWE keeping the name Happy Corbin as kind of a parody? Are we ready for yet another character shift with Baron Corbin? Like, I don't know exactly what is going on with his character, but for them to keep calling him Happy Corbin, he was at the beginning, being he won all these millions at Vegas, all that, and obnoxiously happy. And then just last couple months have just been, I don't know. Maybe he's ready for a character change. I don't know what's going on, but what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, he had success obviously as a GM, and just being that type of that villain, that heel. And I think they really should have just stuck with when he was like, I forgot what they called him, but he was just pretty much like homeless, and it, kind of looked like he was going to be turning into like a baby face, because there was like, I think maybe on the show or just looking on the internet, there was like ideas of like how they could creatively change him to be like, all right, people have helped me out, for so many months. It could be a segment where someone's getting, their butt kicked, and he can come out and save them. And I don't know if the fans would get on it, but I felt like that was the closest he had, because there hasn't been any times besides, I think, the Andre the Giant Battle Royal where he's won that. Other than that, he hasn't won any titles. He hasn't done anything like really significant. So I mean, I liked him more when he just had a, more of a GM role, and that's what we are obviously missing. I think he could go back to that, because the other ones that we've had, it's just been miserable. There's no authority anywhere. Hopefully that's something that Triple H is going to be working on, but the whole Happy Corbin thing, I don't see why he has a purpose to come out happy. He's on a losing streak. He might have like kayfabe money on him, but like he's not doing anything at all. Like, he got embarrassed at WrestleMania. He lost to Ricochet, where generally he probably would beat Ricochet in a one-on-one match. But yeah, I mean, the only good thing that came out of it was a throwback, and he did like the world's strongest slam on the announcer table.
I forgot about that spot, and they actually called it that. I'm like, Mark Henry, is he aware of this? Yeah. I just, with Happy Corbin right now, I mean, or Corbin in general, Baron Corbin, I think that the most significant accomplishment that he's ever had in his professional career is something that has nothing to do with WWE. How many times do they mention throughout his match, or at least once per match, that he's a Golden Gloves boxing champion, right? Like, how many times are we going to be told this? I'm like, that's a good thing when you're bringing somebody in, or occasionally once every few months, or once every 6 to 12 months, whatever. But it's every time we see him that the announcers have to tell us he's a Golden Gloves boxing champion. I'm like, okay, but what has he done here? He's been here for how many years? It feels like 10 years. And what has he done here? Okay, those are credentials you want for somebody who's new, because then you learn a little bit about them and that kind of thing. But it just feels, it's so weird. Are you noticing this too?
I think sometimes they're just desperate to put anything on there to, like, all right, maybe it's for the new fans, but it's like, we know who this guy is. We don't need to hear his credentials repeated every week. And something where I'm like, for a guy that I don't know much about boxing, I don't know what that means. Like, I'm guessing you won some type of tournament at a, semi-professional level, but it's like, I'd rather hear more credentials of, like, clearly if you were like on the practice squad of like the Colts, you had probably a decent college career. Like, throw out a few things like, oh, he led his college team in tackles or whatever his position was. Like, I'd rather hear stuff like that, because that's more relevant. I'd be more, if I was, Corbin, I'd be more proud to hear those than the boxing.
Like, boxing's not that big in the United States. Like, it's just not.
No.
MMA, like, if he was, the UFC champ, UFC heavyweight champion, whatever, then sure. Like, or even, what's the other, Bellator? Like, if you're some kind of UFC or MMA promotion, fine. But like boxing, it's like, all right, yeah, I'm sure that was pretty badass, but like, no one watches boxing. I'm sorry. Like, nobody does. Outside, after Mike Tyson left, like, that's kind of it, right? I mean, I got Holyfield or Floyd Money Mayweather. Like, you got these big stars that occasionally pop in and out, Pacquiao and all that. But like, outside of that, no one knows anything about boxing. So I don't know. I understand the purpose of them bringing it up, and I'm making probably a mountain out of a molehill here, but it's just something I've noticed that I've never mentioned, because it's just something I gloss over. But now it's getting to the point of, like, he's been here a decade. Can we stop talking about that? That means nothing to most of us.
Yeah, and especially in WWE, the last thing we've heard about boxing, people want to forget, is the Brawl for All.
God.
Remember that? Yeah. So, like, it's funny that they still kind of mention, because anything like bad that happened, years past, they try not to, bring anything up that resembles it. They try to just like completely pretend like it never happened. So like, when I do hear that, I think about that, because I've watched that, when it was on what was called the WWE Network, and I'm like, wow, what a disaster that was. So it's interesting that they still kind of bring up boxing.
Ooh, yeah, anybody that has no idea what the hell we're talking about with a Brawl for All, it happened in the late 90s. It was a real, put the gloves on and the guys actually try to knock each other out tournament, like real.
Yeah.
And it ended up with shortened careers, screwed up, long-term health issues. Like, it was a disaster that Jim Ross actually admits was, even at the time, because they tried to have Dr. Death Steve Williams win, and like, there's this whole thing. I won't give away the documentary, but there is, I believe, something on the network about the Brawl for All on Peacock. It's worth watching, because it was a total disaster.
I think it might be on Vice, or like it could be on
like Dark Side of the Ring.
Dark Side of the Ring.
Yeah. Okay.
But a lot of those are for free, so if anyone's listening, like, you can easily access that on the internet for free.
Very good. Yeah, very good. All right. Well, let's move on here. The New Day and the Viking Raiders thing. Everyone knows. Look, personally, it's not a secret. I can't stand the New Day in any form, fashion at all. None of them. But for them to come out there and actually get a serious tone, I was waiting for it to turn into something wacky, and it eventually did. That we all knew he was not really, paralyzed, right? Like Xavier Woods. We all knew it was going to turn into something. and they were serious at least for a couple of minutes. And then the Viking Raiders come out and they try to attack both of them, but we had Xavier with 2 kendo sticks take out with Kofi, take out both of those guys, Eric and Ivar. The one thing I'll say about this is, again, for a positive is they were actually serious, even if it wasn't really to be serious. It was nice to see them not making stupid jokes. But also, when they said that their legacy is bootios and unicorn horns being burned, is it how? I mean, I don't know. When I heard that's their legacy that they saw being burned last week by the Viking Raiders, I'm like, that's not how I want to be remembered. Like, if I was a professional wrestler in WWE, I would not want to look at unicorn horns and bootios, a cereal, as my legacy and contribution to the business. Like, when they said that, it was just kind of like, I don't know. People love the New Day. I don't understand why. I have no idea how they haven't been turned on by the crowd yet. I have no clue, and it's just puzzling to me. But I think the segment was effective. I think it was effective if you're a fan of the New Day, and it's also the Viking Raiders, who have been completely reinvigorated in a very good way. It's setting up for a nice matchup between these two that'll likely, I think, take place, although I don't know if it's official, at Clash of the Castle. So what did you think about this?
Yeah, I mean, I'm right there with you. I am so sick of the New Day. I hope Big E is having a healthy recovery, but once that happened, I'm like, okay, like he's kind of the big star there. Like once he's done, and then Xavier was getting injured, I'm like, all right, you haven't heard much about them. Maybe like Triple H is fizzling them out, and it's just like, I understand, like, it gets some of the young crowd and whatnot, but it's like, I think all those fans that really enjoyed them, they're a lot older now. This has been like 6-7 years going on now, and it's just, this isn't Nickelodeon. This isn't Disney. All right. Like it's getting ridiculous. And the only time I really probably enjoyed it was, Kofi Mania, when they had his back and everything like that. But after that, it's annoying it's kind of, in my opinion, kind of disrespectful to look at like tag teams like the Dudley Boys, Hardys, and Edge and Christian, and seeing that, they had probably more tag team title reigns than they did. And I just felt like it was a lot harder to earn a tag team championship back in the late 90s, early 2000s. But yes, I think it will be a good matchup. I think will increase the value of the Viking Raiders. But at the same time, I'd rather see the Viking Raiders they should have squashed them after like 2 or 3 weeks and be done with it. But I'd rather see Viking Raiders first, even though there's no story to it. I'd rather see Viking Raiders versus the Usos at the pay-per-view, because that seems like their biggest threat now. Because I'm ready for someone and those guys are big, and they've improved when they went down to NXT, and I'm just waiting for a real challenge for the Usos to defend those titles again.
Yeah, the Usos do need some new opponents, some fresh opponents, and of course, the Street Profits, we all know they go well together, but that's been overdone. Even though they had one of the best tag team matches I've seen in years at the Money in the Bank event, it's time to move on, and they have. Of course, Hit Row seems to be next in line, perhaps, for the Usos when that happens. But yeah, the Viking Raiders, I don't think are in tag team contention yet. The New Day and the Usos we've seen 100 million times. So, yeah, I mean, definitely I think that there needs to be some kind of new contender, new challenger for the Usos. But right now the Usos are so tied up with Roman Reigns' business and taking out Drew McIntyre that may take a back burner for just a little bit. But, all right, so let's continue on here just in the interest of time. The Women's Tag Team Title Tournament is now set. Finals are set with Raquel Rodriguez and Aaliyah, who are going to take on, hold on a second, I was going to, I lost my, do you know who it is offhand while I scroll?
Dakota Kai
there you
and Io Shirai.
There you go, yes, there you go. So Raquel and Aaliyah took on Sonya and Natalya. That's the match I'm looking at for that right to go to the finals in the Women's Tag Team Title Tournament. So they will now face Bayley's two cronies of Io and Dakota on, I think it's Monday Night Raw, right? They said it's going to be on Raw?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. So that's interesting, but it's fine. Yeah. So what do you think about this final? Are you looking at this going, I was expecting it would be two different teams. Were you? I mean, because that one bracket got changed like 4 times because of injury.
Yeah.
So go ahead.
Oh yeah, I was just kind of really bummed out because I was hoping it was going to be like when I first saw that I was like, all right, this faction, they got to have the tag team belts on them. So I kind of knew Bayley, not spoiler alert, but not really, but Bayley's faction, the Dakota Kai and Io Shirai, they're going to take those titles, but it really should have been a showdown between those two and Alexa Bliss and Asuka. Even though they face each other, they should have faced each other for the titles, not for like the semi-finals. And that could have been done, at Clash at the Castle, and but obviously they're still having that like 6-man tag, which I don't know. I think that's still a waste of using Bianca. I know it's building up to something bigger, but it's like you still probably could have had her first title defense against maybe Bayley and have the tag team titles defended on there, or have the tournament finalized at Clash of the Castle. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, I was pretty pumped to see those NXT superstars win it, but unfortunately one of them got injured, so they had to redo it. But the one thing I hope that they'll bring up, because I know they like to erase history from NXT or just stuff in the past, but like Raquel Gonzalez or Rodriguez?
Yes. Yeah, Rodriguez.
They change the names all the time. Raquel and Dakota Kai, they were like partners, and Dakota turned her back on her. So like there's some history there. So I hope they acknowledge that, because that's the only thing that I'm kind of really looking forward to in that match. What about you?
Well, yeah, that is something that if your best chance is if Triple H is in charge, and he's in charge, for him to remind the fans of that. And I think that's a good point to bring up. And I don't know if they'll work on that or if they'll use that as part of the promotional material. They may or may not. I won't be surprised or hold it against the creative team if they don't, but it's kind of low-hanging fruit right there. I mean, why would you not want to make this feel like as big of a match as possible? But this matchup is fine with me. You would imagine that the favorites are Dakota Kai and Io Sky. You would imagine that they are, given their brand new to WWE in terms of having in this group with Bayley at the forefront. You'd imagine that they want to get gold. They want to establish them as a formidable team right away, and that's the smart money. But there's also a case to be made for Raquel Rodriguez and Aaliyah. Aaliyah is not the most exciting, I'll say that. Like, Aaliyah is just kind of generic Wrestler X because they haven't done much character development with her at all.
Yeah.
But Raquel has had some really good matches, nearly beating Ronda Rousey for the Women's Championship just about a month ago. She has made some noise in the Gauntlet match. I think a few weeks ago, she beat like 3 women in a row, and then she ran into the buzzsaw of what's her name? The one that's I'm running out of names here. Gosh, what's her name?
Natalia?
No, not Natalia. The one that's facing Liv Morgan. Oh my God!
Shayna Baszler.
Yeah, Shayna Baszler.
Yeah.
God, guys, we're recording this. It's like nearly 11 o'clock at night. So bear with us at the end of the day. We have kids that our mind goes blank. But yeah, so Shayna Baszler is the one who beat Raquel. So Raquel Rodriguez, I think, has made some noise, and I wouldn't be shocked if they put the belts on those two. The smart money does, though, say Dakota Kai and Io Sky, based on the fact that they just debuted in this group with Bayley.
Yeah, I mean, I think the only way I would see them take it is for Alexa Bliss and Asuka to kind of like distract or whatever. Just so if they do lose, it adds more heat to the 6-man tag at Clash at the Castle. Because I feel like I don't think there's going to be much attention towards that 6-man tag on Monday. With that tag team title celebration. But again, like I said, if Raquel and the other one, again, I know we're blanking on names. We got dad brains right now.
I know.
If they win it, I think it's only because Alexa Bliss and Asuka distract and help them, just so it adds more spice to their 6-man tag match.
Yeah, that's kind of a forgotten matchup at the event. I mean, it's one of those that I was excited. I'm like, okay, cool. They're not going with we're not going with Bayley getting a Raw Women's Championship match right away. They're building to that. With Bianca, they're going to probably do that at Extreme Rules, which I believe is the next event in October. I'm almost positive it's that, and then Survivor Series, and then So they're taking their time with that because they're going to milk that. That's probably going to be at least a 2-3 month program. So I get why they're not doing it, but also at the same time, this is a big tag team matchup and it's barely being talked about. So they got some work to do on Monday Night Raw. But all right, again, let's continue on here a little bit quickly. Oh, as we were saying, with things that WWE is telling us are going to happen next week, here are 2 things I didn't even mention. Karrion Kross making his in-ring return next week. In-ring. In other massive breaking news, the Maximum Male Models will also make their in-ring debut against Hit Row next week. So there's 2 other things that are going to happen. New Day and Viking Raiders in a Viking Rules match. I mean, there's like 5-6 things. Okay, so there was even more than I mentioned. So, but before I get to next week, what do you think, I guess, about Maximum Male Models? I don't want to spend a ton of time on this, but, there's Maxine and there's Max Dupree, right? I get it, all that, and they're more of kind of the entertainment-y part of the show. I don't know. Do you have any thoughts on the Maximum Male Models at all?
No, not at all. I mean, I honestly, I could go, it would be just more negative and it just wouldn't be PG on this podcast. So I'm just going to leave it at that.
All right. No, fair.
Let's hope they just get buried in like a couple weeks.
It could be. Yeah. I'm very interested to see now that Vince isn't here. If Vince were here, these guys would be tag team champions like in 2 weeks. But, because he'd feel that would be shock TV and it'd be hilarious. But with Triple H now in charge, now I really do wonder, you're going to see what Triple H values in terms of the entertainment-y part of WWE. Like, what is he, what value, what part of the totem pole is this stuff to Triple H? So we're going to find out quickly what his thoughts are. But what about Karrion Kross for you?
All I can say, for next week is I hope he doesn't, face a, out of the nowhere returning Jeff Hardy, because he's had some bad luck with him,
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
I'm excited, but at the same time, they just keep putting too many jobbers and just like no names. It's just put like a Ricochet, just put like a solid B-level wrestler and show that he can prove that he can, kick some butt and, prove to it. But, I'm just excited for like because a lot of people, I didn't really see him in NXT. So like, but people were like, I can't believe they took away like so much of his entrance, his wife being there and the clock and all that. So I'm really excited to see just even his entrance and his outwear and everything like that, because they made a fool of him, like wearing the mask and, again, trying to keep it PG, but he looked like it was like almost like a sex dungeon, like one of those guards or whatever. It's just, but that was a time where Vince was, I really think, just spitting in Triple H's face of, all these NXT superstars. So
Vince felt like he had to put his touch on things that weren't broken. And now I think you're going to see a much smoother, while all won't work, I think a much higher percentage have a chance of just transitioning smoothly from NXT to quote unquote the main roster. Because Triple H, that was his brainchild, and that's the whole point of going to NXT, to figure out who you are, what character you are, how to cut promos, and then all of a sudden you got to like blow it up because Vince feels that that's not going to work. I mean, so that's why you saw so many NXT stars fail. Karrion Kross, obviously not his fault, being told what to do with the whole infamous mask thing, yes. But what about Roman Reigns' 2-year anniversary next week? How do you not see Drew McIntyre interfering in this? I mean, like, right?
Yeah. I mean, I would think it's. I don't see it being like a huge celebration. I mean, he'll come out and he'll have the blood in there, and maybe I think it would be interesting to have like Sammy like kind of suck up more and give him like here's a big like birthday gift or like a 2-year anniversary gift. And because Sammy just reminds me of like, just like when you watch those shows where you got a group of friends and there's always that one guy that's part of the friends, but not really, and doesn't really get invited to the parties or whatever, but he's still part of the clique or whatever. So I think because Sammy's great on the mic. And when you see those conversations that they have, in his office and stuff with just Roman Reigns and Sammy, Sammy can hold his own on the mic. So I think it would be very interesting besides the typical like, acknowledge him for 2 years, he's defeated these people, he's main evented this and that. Like, we know that. but add a little bit of trickery, and maybe Sammy will just be trying too hard, when that happens. But yeah, I think, Drew will definitely come out and wreak havoc. The only thing I just get kind of nervous about is the contenders that are going for the championship, when they are on top on the last SmackDown before the pay-per-view, that usually means, they're not going to take away the W at the pay-per-view, but I could be wrong. But what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely possible. I mean, that's the general rule of thumb is that. I mean, I can't really argue with you on that. I mean, I'm not trying to cop out on that, but that's pretty much my opinion on that too as well. But okay, so given that we've covered SmackDown pretty well, I want to jump to Raw, but only briefly, just for some kind of high things, and then I want to get just some thoughts on Clash at the Castle. Okay, so Riddle and Seth, they brawled to open the show, they brawled throughout the show, or at least in another segment, and what do you feel about Riddle and Seth? You like the way it's being managed?
Yes and no. I just think, I did not like how, to backtrack it, I didn't like how Cody won all 3 matches because, Seth, he's been really a company man, and he's really been helping out, the younger guys and whatnot, but he needs a win. And I love Riddle to death. Like, he's been, when he first came up, I'm like, this guy is like a doofus. Like, I can't take him serious, but like, he's becoming more intense, especially when he was under the radar of Randy Orton and stuff like that. But I just have good faith in Seth because, before he got interrupted by Matt Riddle, he mentioned, he's like, I'm coming back for you, Roman Reigns. So even that reference, because I would love to see that, because Roman still hasn't really beaten him cleanly. But with Riddle and Seth, it's going to be a great match, and they are showing a lot of intensity, and they're prolonging it. I thought it was going to be good for SummerSlam, but I guess if they want to push it to Clash at the Castle, maybe that's even bigger. But I think Seth needs this win more than Riddle. Maybe this could be a return of Randy Orton. We have no idea. But I'm really, really pushing for Seth to take this over, because he needs to regain some of his power.
Mm-hmm. Oh God, Seth needs a win. My God, to Seth. I mean, Riddle. Yeah, it won't hurt Riddle as much to lose as it would hurt Seth to lose, and that's kind of weird to say, but given that Seth is a much more established and veteran star than Riddle is, but Seth has taken some brutal losses. So I totally agree. Yeah, I think that Riddle needs right now, he can afford a loss. It's fine. He's still up and coming. It's not going to ruin his career. He's got 1,000,000 days ahead of him. So totally, I'm on board with that. Now, when I move to Kevin Owens is a guy that last week, not this past week, but almost 2 weeks ago, he came out, cut a promo with Drew, a program I didn't know I wanted. They're obviously not going to get to that right away. But this week he takes on Chad Gable. He won with a pop-up powerbomb, which was interesting. He didn't win with a stunner, but then he took out Otis with a stunner at the end of the match, and then powerbombed Gable on top of Otis. Kevin Owens continues to be on the rise here, and this is something encouraging that I guarantee we wouldn't see if Vince McMahon was in charge. I know we're painting Vince to be the ultimate, just this awful person. Vince gave us some of the best wrestling memories we've ever had. Let's not forget that. But as he aged, I think there's no doubt that the stress, lack of sleep, and constantly having to worry about paying off the women he was sleeping with got to him, right? But I mean, also he was geriatric. He's in his 70s. Look, all of us will lose brain function at that point. Yeah. So it's going to happen. So it was just time for him to step down, and luckily this thing came along, because I like what I'm seeing so far. But Kevin Owens is going to be a big beneficiary of Triple H, I believe, being in charge, and I like what I'm seeing out of Kevin Owens. It's like the muzzle and the handcuffs in a very metaphorical way have been taken off of Kevin Owens. It feels like we're truly seeing a real version of Kevin Owens. I don't know. I know he said that, but it feels like that.
Yeah. And I mean, when those two were going at it, that was one of the best promos I've seen in a while. And I actually legitimately had goosebumps. I felt like a little kid, watching, the old promos from the early 2000s with Rock and Stone Cold. And with Kevin, even especially, you don't hear this, but like referencing, I haven't been champion in 5 years.
Oh,
Like
that was crazy.
Vince would never allow that. He would never want that to ever be said. And it also gave me hope where he's like, I think he referenced like whether it's the tag teams, the U.S. title. So he wasn't just, putting it solely on the WWE championship or the universal title or anything like that. He's just making himself known, like, I'm relevant. This is how talented I am. And like we've said during this whole podcast, we're going back to the roots, and he's actually wearing some of his old gear, like almost duct taped KO, just keep fighting. And he's kind of like in that gray area of like heel and like babyface. He's just like, he just wants to fight. And I saw him kind of, high-fiving a lot of fans and whatnot, but he's always been one of my favorites from the get-go. And plus that was one of Triple H's like right-hand mans too. So like I could see him, putting him back in the mix. I mean, or like I don't know if it's been said, but creative could really do wonders by if Sammy just feels unappreciated, having Sammy and him reunite and take the tag team titles off the Usos, because that would be a fun tag team champions right there.
They could literally, like, Kevin Owens is kind of, he's hiding, he's under the radar, but he's not. Like, Triple H clearly is looking at him, and he's elevating him on television, but he's really a guy that doesn't have a clear path right now, even though he's being elevated, and that's really exciting, because you know what Triple H feels about him, that he's going to be in a much better position, like a million times better position than Vince what he would do with him, kind of take him in, take him out. He's off TV for 6 months. Like, it was very bizarre what Triple H, or rather Vince, did with KO. But it's exactly what Kevin Owens said in his promo. He really could go anywhere or do anything right now. He doesn't have a clear direction. He could be tag team champions with Sammy. That would be awesome. The chemistry those two have is freaking phenomenal. Whether it's against or for or with each other, they could be a kind of a heel comedy act. I know that sounds like an oxymoron, but they could be. They could honestly be a babyface tag team if they wanted to be facing the Usos. They would be a babyface tag team. Yeah. So he could do that. He could absolutely challenge for the U.S. title. If he transfers over to SmackDown, he could be Intercontinental. Like, he could be world champ. Like, he literally has everything at his disposal right now if they wanted to do that. So Kevin's in a really exciting place, even though it's weird to say that given he doesn't have an actual direction. Any comments on that before I ask you one more thing about Raw?
Just with adding with all, not just only Kevin Owens, but just multiple wrestlers that have a lot of upside and have a lot of opportunity to achieve a title or just a certain main event status. That would be my only benefit to seeing, the draft again this year, just mixing up, even though they go back and forth on Raw and SmackDown. There's really no like brand split, but like, I think that would be very interesting in mixing it up by, actually doing this draft and seeing where people end up, because then that can really heighten some storylines.
Agreed. Yes, I do. I believe that. And I just hope that maybe Triple H will take the brand split a little more seriously, where in 2 weeks they just can't help themselves and put somebody on Raw and on SmackDown and they're here and they shouldn't be, and all this nonsense. I mean, so it breaks down very quickly. So I understand the temptation, and it's discipline on their part, but we'll see if they can follow through. All right, one last final question on Raw, and then I want to get some very quick thoughts on the Clash of the Castle event. I'll just say the name, Dexter Lumis.
Ooh, scary dude. That deer in the headlights look. I think we spoke about him briefly in the beginning, but I like the way things are going right now. It's a slow story. I have no idea where it's going. He's just appearing randomly in the stands. I liked the fact that he's just going to attack whoever, like just he took Miz, a heel. So, I mean, I don't know with this guy. I mean, he is, that depth's there. He doesn't talk at all. I think he said I think the only words he said was "I do" during that wedding he was in. But yeah, I that's another like just wild card right there that could heighten the mid card level like so much. Like these NXT superstars, Vince really buried so much talent, and just seeing these guys come back and the way he did too, not like this grand entrance or interrupting a match. No, just like kind of subtle, being in the crowd and, just causing havoc. And I loved it.
Dexter Lumis, again, several fans out there have not seen NXT on a regular basis. You probably know who Dexter Lumis is. You probably know the face if you don't know the name. And the guy has just this robotic, and it's very rare that somebody possesses the quality to be able to do this. It happens, you almost have to be born with it, is that just deadpan stare, that just empty, no one's home, psychotic look. Who else possessed it? John Huber or Luke Harper or whoever you knew him. He had that excellent, just dead stare look that is really difficult to teach, almost impossible to teach. So that's an absolute quality. The look of him, he looks like kind of an 80s villain, like an 80s movie villain. That's just like, you immediately look at him and you go, this guy's you want somebody to he's not somebody you want to look out for in an alley at night. Like, he looks like a genuinely scary, dangerous man. And him taking the Miz away, you would think it's babyface or heel. We don't know yet. We don't know what he's going to be positioned as. But I'm looking forward to whatever they do with Dexter Lumis, as they have put him in a fairly prominent position, taking out, the Miz, and we weren't sure if he was targeting AJ Styles the week before. It was very weird. So I'm on board for this, and totally on board.
Wherever it goes, I'm all on board with it.
All right, well, Clash at the Castle. So I want to ask you. I'm going to cut right to the chase. What happens with Roman and Drew?
All right. So, I feel like I'm confident in this one, not just because of my picks in the last one, but I have a feeling Drew. I'm really, I was 50-50, which I know can seem like a cop out, but I'm really leaning towards more Drew now, like 65-35. They've built this up for a long time. They have had Drew touring around, outside the U.S., for the last 3-4 months about this pay-per-view. He hasn't been champion in a while. He saved, the COVID era by being champion. He did not get to, the closest thing he was able to enjoy was celebrating the Royal Rumble when he won that. After that, everything was, no one was around. And even when he had that WrestleMania against Bobby Lashley, he lost. Like, it's his time. He is showing that he continues, not only with his talent and just his power, but just making points where it's like we're done with having these part-time champs that come once a month. I'm sure he probably wanted to refer to Brock Lesnar if he could have, but but the only thing for me is the the Usos still have their tag team titles, and typically usually the lower card titles get lost in a faction like that first. But again, this also could be tricking me, and I'd still tip my hat off to Triple H, where his creative is so good that it's not this predictable, and I'm picking Drew to win this one. And again, maybe it could be a stipulation, with Paul Heyman, where he says something in there he only defends the WWE title or some BS thing like that. I don't care. If that's how it goes, then we got a champion on Raw. But I just think they owe it to the fans and all that. I don't, especially if they're gonna have this whole Rock and Roman thing might happen. You don't want any titles involved for WrestleMania. So I'd rather. I think this is time. So I'm putting all my cards in Drew McIntyre now. He's paid his dues. He's had a lot of matches throughout pay-per-views where they're completely pointless, and he's doing segments where he's just he's way better than this and deserves better treatment, and this is where I think he gets rewarded. But what do you think, man?
Yeah, this is now, again, of course, we still have one more week of TV to go, but it seems like everything is locked in place as to what the outcomes could be, and I'm going to stick with what I have felt all along, and that is Drew does win. I'm pretty close to your percentages. I'm about 75-25, maybe a little more confident that Drew wins, but I could still see Roman retaining come hook or crook. Somebody comes in, maybe somebody new joins the bloodline. I don't know. Something wacky. Who knows? But so I wouldn't freak out or be super disappointed or whatever. I wouldn't be super shocked if Drew loses, but he's in his backyard, right? He's in his home country. They did all the promotional material. He's, as you said, he spent weeks over there marketing for this particular event. And they said, it's 30 years since a stadium show happened in the UK, which is really kind of mind-blowing when you think about it. And so you put all that together, and the fact that Triple H seems to be more in tune with, or at least willing to do what fans want or are complaining about, which is kind of a good and bad trait. You don't want to give them everything they want because sometimes they just react irrationally. But this has been a long-standing complaint among fans, and I'm sure among the wrestlers, that, hey, we don't have a world championship on Raw. This is affecting my career now. So there's a lot to be said for that. But I think it's time that WWE does drop one of those belts. I'm still going to stick with my theory, although it's probably wrong, about how it happens. Drew beats Roman. Paul Heyman on Raw comes out the next night or 2 nights later and says, well, did you read the fine print, Drew? This was only for the WWE Championship. It's not for the Universal. Therefore, you are only the WWE Champion. I mean, whether or not that happens, I don't know. I don't even care how it happens, as I've said. I just want one of those belts back to Raw. Drew should be the one to do it. I think there's a reason why they've kept the championship belts separate and not created an actual undisputed championship like they did in 2002 is when they actually unified the belts and created a totally new single belt. So I think there's a reason they've done that beyond the visual of Roman holding up 2 belts. But that's what I think happens. Drew beats Roman. Everyone flips out only to find out that Roman Reigns is still Universal Champion.
Yeah. And, and don't forget, I mean, Theory could, kind of do his false cash in, which, gosh, I hope none of that happens again. But, it was nice. It felt like no one's, maybe Brock did it once, but I can't remember last time someone was like kind of standing over Roman or just standing in the arena with both belts like held up in their hands. And that was Drew. And I was like, all right, that's foreshadowing, sort of like that. What was it? It was like a house show, and it was Roman versus like Brock or something. And it was at, what's that arena in New York? Madison Square Garden.
MSG, yep.
Yeah. And he like held the 2 belts like over him with the steps. And that was just kind of foreshadowing what he was going to do like for WrestleMania. So, I'm really hoping Drew, he's earned it. He's put in a lot of work, and they deserve to have a full-time champ. And I think it wouldn't make any sense for Drew to have that amazing promo with Kevin but right before that, he mentioned all the guys who would challenge. Like, I would love to see AJ Styles have like one more crack at a world championship. These would be some solid matches. Hell, I mean, even Edge could have one more match. How about that? So.
Yeah, he could too, and we still don't know what's going to happen with Edge. I mean, we saw him on Raw, of course. We didn't really talk about him much, but he faced Damien Priest and beat Damien Priest, and then his wife came in to help him because they were about to give him another concerto, and so Beth came in and helped him, and we'll have to see where that all lands. I think it's still going to land with the Dominic Mysterio heel turn. Let's all keep our fingers crossed that he's actually going to join the Bloodline. Yeah. But all right, well, very good. Anything else before we wrap it up?
No, man. It's just a pleasure doing these as once a month with you. They're great. I hope everyone gets a good listen out of this, and I hope you get some sleep tonight. I'm gonna try to get maybe 2 or 3 hours before my baby boy Wyatt. If anyone didn't know, he was born on August 5th, so I'm hoping to get some sleep, and I'm just getting some tips and tricks from Matt over here as a seasoned veteran dad, to help me out.
Yeah, I'm on number 2, and it's never really, you're never really a veteran. You just kind of suffer a little bit more, and you learn a little bit more the hard way as you continue. It's the greatest thing ever, but it's the hardest thing ever. So yeah, definitely sleep is at a premium. So I feel guilty right now because I know exactly what you're going through. So we'll end it here. I do need sleep as well, but definitely, we'll be reconvening in about 4 weeks or so after the Clash at the Castle event, and as we're looking forward to Extreme Rules. So thanks so much for being on, and we'll be in touch.
All right, take care, Matt.
You too.
Thanks for listening to the WWE Podcast. Don't forget to subscribe on your favorite podcast app so you don't miss a show, or head to WWEpodcast.com. And for all of these shows ad-free, head over to patreon.com/WWE Podcast. Until then, we'll see you next time.